Season 3, Episode 5, Whakaari, Volcano Island. Alan explains the court case around Whakaari, White Island, and thrill-based recreational activities in tourism that can cause catastrophic phenomena. The island was a smouldering like a magic dragon, Sara elaborates. I've been there, announces Trajce, travelled by helicopter. Trajce recounts his motivation to visit Whakaari and the out-of-this-world experiences where the lava looked like neon ooze from outer space. The team debate the cultural approaches to risk and the thrill of risk-taking in sport and recreation. Trajce explains that violenti non-fit injuria, voluntary acceptance or assumption of risk. Sara challenges, how do you really prepare people for the risk realities, as she relays a sibling teenage escapade that was made for college movies. And our listeners, please be advised that there are references to the fatalities in White Island and references to a teenage activity that would be deemed to be deviant.
Yeah, willing and able. DJ Code Red, Saber. We're gonna get this started. Yeah. This is how we starting it. Let's get started, 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 let's get started. Who's gonna start this? We're gonna start this.
Hello and welcome to the Why Work podcast series. You are listening to Trace Vitkovsky, Sara Pizzell and Alan Girl.
It's complicated.
No, he's taking...
Can I just caution you against making admissions?
That's it. And because they're adults. Yeah, they're adults. They can go drinking and do that. I'm like, but...
He's going to slip it in
everything
there.
I do is by design, guys.
When will you find out?
Right, okay.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. All right, now listen. There's enough of me talking. Start. Do something.
White Island. Tell us about White Island.
White Island.
Yes, you've been there, haven't you?
Yes. Now listen, why are we raising White Island, Alan?
Well, I think we all know that there's a court case going on at the moment. At the time of recording this, it's not quite completed, but most of the parties have either pleaded guilty or the charges have been discontinued against them.
And explain what White Island is, because our audience is around the globe.
Yeah, okay. So it's an island off New Zealand, which has an active volcano, active in the sense that it's often puffing away and producing gases.
Like a magic dragon.
Yeah.
That's what that makes me thinking of.
But the problem is the fumes that it produces are toxic and very hot.
Like a magic dragon.
Yeah, but there's nothing friendly about it.
No, and we're mentioning this today is because I would like to devote an episode to recreational activities, fun activities, once-in-a-lifetime activities.
So something for a thrill.
A bit of fear.
A bit of fear, a bit of thrill, being on the edge, right?
And to be able to experience that, a relevant person conducting a business undertaking.
Is that why you went there?
Here's the thing.
Under the legal hat, you mean?
No,
he went there as a tourist.
I went to White Island. In
Boulder, you're climbing. What are you doing there
here's
on the
thing.
volcano?
Oh, yeah, I was about bouldering in the tick.
Actually, it's funny you should say that because there's no made pathways going in. You have to walk across the boulders.
Oh, you have to boulder your way in. Okay, so...
Well, all of you are talking about things that you've seen on television, currently on Netflix. There's volcano, stuff you read from the paper. I can say, I've been there. I can say, what's the term? Lived experience. I can say, and I didn't use a boat to get there.
But hold on, what was your motivation to go there in the first place?
Here's the thing, we had no idea we're going to this place.
Oh, what?
I've got a great story for our listeners.
Were you on a cruise liner?
No, we don't use sea. Helicopter.
Okay. Do it in style, private landing pad.
Was that your own helicopter or you had someone else's?
It was chartered, but it was a pretty good one. It was a black one. Pretty impressive.
Jet and I won. My son and I won a helicopter ride. One of the ones old MASH with no doors on the side. So here I am. I'm in it. It's a thrill. I didn't actually ask what about the doors. I was just like, I remember this with MASH.
G.I. Jane, watch out.
It was so fun. We went up and down the coast on Noosa hinterland.
Yeah.
It was a surf club lotto ticket for surf lifesaving.
Wow.
There on the weekend for nippers. And so that was my thrill. I did not ask once about the concerns. I just was like, I'm in.
Well, that's
The
interesting.
helicopters are I find them a bit scary because they're paper thin.
And you can, the whole glass bulb, you see everything around you.
In
It was
fact,
so
another
fun.
story, which for another time, this is the North Island in Whakaari. However, near Queenstown, we use a helicopter to arrive at these glaciers. But that's another story. That was real Lord of the Rings
Right,
kind of
I've
stuff.
done that. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it is on a helicopter.
Yeah. Yes.
And they're wonderful. No, but this was a separate story. And I mention it today because obviously when you're an OHS practitioner, your world revolves around risk assessment, defining a hazard, particularising all the relevant hazards and the likelihood.
And if you're a designer, I would say your life revolves around storytelling.
Well, this is where...
Discovery and design and realisation is all about telling a good story.
Well, I like the design universe. I like it.
So do
I like the OHS. No, I like the Iron Cage. That's the OHS too. I like it. But today I wanted to devote, this is why I mentioned White Island. Today I want to devote this idea of, I'm going to try and use the terms risk and hazards a lot less, and perhaps the word design and
consequence, or material
danger.
in an event. Yeah.
No, danger, Will Robinson.
Danger exists when hazards have not been well managed, right? So danger, it's not necessarily, often we say it's a dangerous situation. Well, that implies we should have some awareness about the design capabilities that could improve that situation.
Well, isn't it a bit like the roller coaster ride in that it's supposed to be completely safe, but you have the perception of danger?
And that's what I want to draw you to.
Perception of danger, right.
Well, I'm going to take it one step further.
But when real danger actually lies beneath, and people don't want to acknowledge this, right?
Well, how do you manage a volcano?
Well, here's the thing. I'll take you further. No, we've talked about perception, and that's one of... I love that word perception, obviously. I use it a lot.
Dragon.
We're going to talk about sensing and sensing danger, because sensing and perception, all of these intuitive
So at what
feelings.
point in time did you realise you were going to an active volcano?
Yeah, tell us about this
Here's the
volcano
thing.
visit.
Yes, but before I do that, I just want to lay a little bit of philosophical sort of grounding around this. So as you all know, I'm a huge fan of Foucault.
the academic is.
I'm a huge fan of French philosophers, particularly Foucault and of course Sara.
Yeah.
And Sartre is particularly interesting because he uses the analogy of, climbing on a mountain, a precipice. It's not so much the fear of falling. That's our risk, hazard, safety universe. It's the fear of knowing if you wanted to jump, you could. So this is really all about how you perceive.
Say that again. It's knowing that if you wanted to jump, you could.
There's
so the
your fear.
temptation.
Yeah. I'm going to take our listeners to, for example, you might perceive going to an island as absolutely ludicrous. The thing's going to erupt, blow and explode. So your spider senses would be tingling going, that's stupid. Why would I do that?
But
others might go, I love it. I love the thrill. And that's the whole Sartrean type of philosophy of, you really know what you want.
When you're a tourist, you often go to these things not really knowing what you're going to get. And then if you get to the destination and it's not well managed, you discover as you work your way through it. You don't have that knowledge in advance.
And that's what happened in White Island. So
what you're describing in that philosophy sounds quite empowering as opposed to just vulnerability.
Yeah, it's
so
interesting.
You're making that choice. And that's what I think, Alan, you're getting at is how much is it an informed choice, right?
Yeah.
You're still hoping that things are safe, but what you're describing is, hey, I'm right at that precipice. I'm right at that corner where I could jump off that cliff, right?
And it's funny, and also drawing on climbing parallels, in Australia we're very much focused on risk assessing and making sure nobody gets injured, and that's why you have all the various colours and the grades. But the French approaches to climbing are you just get in, you just hook in, you push yourself. So there's quite a different philosophy to...
It's even like crossing the road in Thailand, in Bangkok, right? You don't just go to the lights. They just say you cross and you put your hand out, and that's just communication to the cars to stop. All the tuk-tuks, all the motorbikes, and the locals will just walk in the middle of it. And that's how they navigate it. Otherwise, they say you'll never get anywhere, right?
So this is China.
Same as China.
Okay. So this is why I really like the word danger.
Different cultural approaches to managing this, and this is what Trajce loves sociology. All right, he's a social scientist.
Yeah, and I do feel that's what's missing from this discipline. There's so much empiricism, which is great. There's a lot of science. We need it. There's a lot of regulation. Obviously, we can all concur. But what we're missing is the that sociological fabric, that cultural.
Yeah, it's
so
important.
I don't mean
like,
psychosocial or psychocultural, but sociocultural. What
Yeah.
happens in China, or what happens in Thailand, or what happens on the French mountain.
Look, Trajce,
What
even
happens
when
on
you're
White
thinking
Island?
about automation with vehicles, right? Self-driving vehicles, automatic, right? The design strategy probably and unlikely has taken into account that when you approach a light, so if I'm turning right here into the campus, I have to edge my way forward, and I wouldn't follow an exact rule book if it was programmed by computers, right? I then take a risk and push through sometimes to keep traffic going, but some of that is really hard to instill that logic, if you will, programming that logic into a vehicle to follow all rules. There's
What
a little
sort
bit
of car are you talking about?
Yeah. I want
Because
Trajce's black Beamer.
Okay, well, then you wouldn't slow down for the corner. If you're in Trajce's car, you'd hook it around.
Well, just an aside, I didn't realise that it had been tweaked. For some reason, it's faster than it should be. It was news to me, but a certain dealership on the south side, brand new showroom, but they tweaked it, and hence the black grille connotes slightly more power than the one without the black grille.
Well, think about when you're approaching
it's lost on me.
roundabouts, lights. There's a little bit of a push, right? You're not
Yeah.
always just following a rigid set of logic rules, a binary system of on or off.
Well,
Hey,
Trajce took me
there's-
for a ride this morning in
Oh,
his
how'd
car.
that go? Did you burn
And-
out?
Well, no, he was getting very cross at the other drivers, you know, sort of yelling out, go faster, go faster.
That's my cultural background.
Oh, I've got a story. I'll have to tell you. You know, a teenage story. My brother. I'll tell it really quickly.
Tell the story.
My
the
parents
story.
are out of town. I must have been preteen. Brother's teen, and he found the car keys to the Mercedes. This is in the U.S. He was not yet licensed. Kids
Sara.
took the car out. I was out with friends. Burnouts, donuts, chased, escaped from cops. Came back. My parents came back early.
If he was able to escape from the police, that wasn't the first time.
Probably not.
And that's the thrill.
And then parents came back, and it took a while to notice that the carport post had been damaged as they got back in the house. And then you want to hear what's real? This is such an American teenage kind of story. So the other thing they'd been doing is having butter fights, right? Butter fights, and you know those things that clean your mouth out when you got braces, orthodontic spray guns, and butter fights in the house. My parents came back early before this could all get cleaned up. And I'm sitting there. My dad opens the newspaper, the light's on, there's butter all over the roof. He hasn't seen it yet, right? And it's melting the butter. I'm sitting there at a distance. A dollop of butter, boom, lands in the middle of his open paper. He looks up, and then it was like the gates unleashed. All hell broke loose because you suddenly start to put puzzle pieces together. You see the butter, you see water spray, you go walk around outside, you see the carport, you see the damage to the car, and it doesn't stop.
Oh, no.
That's the longest time I think my brother was ever grounded.
Oh, okay, full disclosure. I remember doing something like that.
What?
But-
The lawyer?
Wait a minute. I remember
Wait.
doing something like that. But
Were you prosecuted, Mr. Prosecutor?
we completely top down, spotless. It was like watching a Pulp
So you
Fiction
cleaned it
episode.
up. You cleaned up the blood and the mess and the gore
no
and the
evidence.
guts.
The broken eggs.
Did you have a
etc.
mafioso guy to call?
No,
Like my
I was the
contacts,
cleaner.
my
No.
contacts in Wisconsin and
No
Chicago.
need. I was the cleaner. We made sure there was no evidence, but guess how we got caught out?
How?
Well, we got to the top shelf whiskey,
Oh, it was the
and
whiskey.
we had to replace it, and of course we bought cheap whiskey, and that's the naivety.
Yeah.
And that's how we got caught out.
How old were you?
Oh, yes, before I did law, let's just say.
Who's gonna start this? We're gonna start this. Press play and plug in the microphone cable. Next up is the crew willing and able, satisfying your thirst. Come and clean on the verse, precise and rehearsed. Toys are getting
Island story. Now, Alan, as you know, relevant defendants, they've either pleaded guilty.
Multiple defendants.
Multiple defendants, they've pleaded guilty.
And
but we
some
don't-
charges were dropped.
Right, we don't know the outcome of White Island at this stage, do we?
No, we don't know the fine just yet.
Right.
But we do know that my understanding is the remaining defendants have pleaded guilty.
So what exactly happened? Explain this to the listeners.
Good point.
Well,
What
for
happened?
want of a better term, it was a workplace incident. But we'll tell you the narrative behind this workplace incident. Essentially, White Island, it has another name, which escapes me at the moment. White Island's traditional name of the Māori people
I don't know either. So my apologies to the people that might be concerned about that.
It's but it's near Whakatane, and it's one of the major tourist attraction zones in the Bay of Plenty.
Whakaari.
Whakaari. Thank you. Thank you for finding that for me. I feel better. Now,
Puya Whakaari, the dramatic volcano, not just any old volcano, dramatic.
Isn't that wonderful? Because it is a dramatic volcano, and that in itself is part of that sensing danger. If the term is dramatic, clearly, and it's volcanic, if you put those two terms together, it could be a recipe for disaster.
And last eruption, it says 9th of December 2019.
So we're talking about a volcanic island. Most of it's submerged. So you can't really see just how big this rock is because most of it's submerged. But the top is what it makes the visible island.
Can I explain the meaning behind the White Island? Apparently, the story is a medicine man named Nagatoro was climbing up Tongariro with a woman named Aruho. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that. He told his followers not to eat while he was gone in order to give him strength on top of the cold mountain.
I've been to that island by helicopter.
Which is probably a safer way to do it.
But it wasn't for the people who
they came by a cruise liner.
But there were some people on a helicopter. There was the pilot. It was an excellent
I think
volcano.
the problem with the helicopters, they went back to try and rescue more people.
Yes. Yeah. Well, anyway, so what happened was we're in New Zealand. My wife has family both North and South Island. And as luck would have it, on her father's side, they're all from Whakatane. So to welcome us, and welcome me, I suppose, into the family, a trip was organised to White Island. Now, that's all I knew about White Island. They may have said it was volcanic, but I just presumed all of New Zealand's on some tectonic plate. So the whole thing's volcanic in my world, my huge Danger Will Robinson world.
Well, this story continues that when Nagatoro did not return, his followers thought him dead. They broke their fast. They immediately began to feel cold, and he prayed to his sisters in the faraway land of Hawaii. The sisters called upon fire demons that began swimming underwater. And they first came out of the water at White Island just to see where they were. The land burst into flames, and it's still burning now. Demons continued on underwater, so the demons were still there. And Nagatoro was saved by the warmth. But our body already had died. And when they took the body and threw this into the volcano, the underwater path of the fire demons can be seen. Everywhere they surfaced is now a thermal area.
That is a powerful story. That's folklore. That's folklore following the law, because precisely we are dealing with now a tragic, catastrophic incident before the law. And I'm really moved by that story because I've been there, and I'm going to dredge up my camcorder footage after this and just sort of reflect. But we arrived, I had no idea what this island was, and suddenly I realised it's as if I'm landing on the moon. Some people have described it as Mars, but anyway, I felt I was on another planet. I felt like I was. It was a pretty...
Did you see the white steam that's supposed to emanate?
We arrived, the first thing I saw, so we were given the usual PPE, helmets, and this gas mask, which looked like a World War II or World War I type mask, a really serious...
And instructions about how to use this if the island erupts or what?
Possibly. This was about 22, 23 years ago, but we definitely had the kit.
Okay.
I think we were told, it was cold, so we had long sleeve anyway, so we had stuff on. But you know what? Before I noticed steam shooting up, actually the first thing I thought was, we're going to shoot our next film clip here, or I'm going to use footage that I'm getting. This is how dramatic...
This was for your band.
For my band, yeah. This is how dramatic the landscape was. So Sarah, steam was just shooting up, just shoof, left, right. But that wasn't the first thing that struck me. The first thing that struck me was the wreck of what was once the hut of 11 miners who perished at the turn of last century whilst working. They were extracting sulphur. So the first thing that struck me was, and it had, I think, their name sort of etched. It was quite dramatic. Possibly there was a plaque.
So
but then I realised, wow, we're actually in a really dangerous... Here we are.
So on the 9th of December 2019, 47 people were on the island when it erupted. Whakatane. 25 survived.
And I believe 22 died. So that's right. So, but before we get to this tragedy, which is before the courts, I'll tell you about this episode, again, is about perception and this sense of, wow, and immediately felt sort of half uncomfortable, but also very excited about it. Only two of us, plus the guide, so it was a very, very special tour. I think 4 people all up, because that's what the helicopter could fit in. And we proceeded to walk towards the crater, and pockets of steam, things were bubbling.
But you're curious, right? You're keen to see it. You want to keep stepping forward, left, right,
Correct.
left, right.
In fact,
feet
I
go
was probably
forward.
more curious, more voyeuristic, more Jean-Paul Sartre-like than I was being a killjoy, freaking out, danger Will Robinson.
Yeah, so that's in the back of your mind, right?
Yeah.
God.
So, go on.
Oh no, it's a terrible image, but it's the devil and the angel on the
Whispering
shoulders.
in your ears.
It was isn't that an Animal House? Terrible movie, Story
of my life.
Fun, like the jokester, and he's tempting him to go after this girl who's passed out. Do I do it? Do I not? Do I do it? Do I not? So you got the devil and the angel and on your shoulders, right?
Yeah, and here we are.
And you were listening to the devil.
And completely, that's right.
That was temptation. Let's go check it out.
Trajce, shame on you.
Like that Kylie Minogue song, Better the Devil You Know. But anyway,
Better the devil you know.
I digress. So, but here we are, and this is completely uncontrolled. This isn't in the comfortable top-down hierarchical space that we're all used to. We are, like I said, I feel like I'm on another planet. I know we're on a volcano now, clearly. Forget what you heard. I'm living it. This thing's happening. I've got stuff shooting everywhere, stuff bubbling, and we head toward the crater. The only way we make our way up, and the only advice given was, don't go near, in the best New Zealand accent, I can't do it really well, but don't go near the crater.
Devil, angel, and
just
you know,
And you know what?
That was Jim Belushi, right? And here's the side note with all my mafia tribe from Wisconsin and Chicago. My mom went to school with Jim Belushi's brother, James Belushi, right? I think a year or two apart.
Al Capone's cook, the grandma. Man, I'm loving
visitor.
this. You have lived there.
The Dillinger Hotel, right? The shootout.
We're
and now James Belushi.
We have to devote a special session to
This is all from far. This is like, remote. I got no claim there, but
this
anyway.
Is good. I like it. It's real Wild Wild West kind of stuff too. And
got to bring the American in here. But we're back. But there were Americans on this island. And
yes, absolutely.
Island, right? There were Americans visiting.
When you watch the volcano, the documentary, which is on Netflix, it's very telling. And make our way up to the precipice again, Jean-Paul Sartre-like, and all I see is just the only way to describe this lake was, the most, well, it was so visceral, but the most highlighter pen, that really, really bright yellow or green highlighter pen. That's the first image I had was, this just looks like when you're highlighting documents, it was so bright.
Which sounds like Martian guts or something. You said being on the moon, right?
Absolutely. This thing was from another planet. And my very first thought on the planet was, you could commit the most perfect crime here.
What, burn them?
Well, if you're going to fall into a pool of acid. Well, this is again.
That's the prosecutor brain, right? There's
I didn't finish law school. It was cool.
There's a facet of work design, and it's designed for crime. And the best people who can assist are criminals, right? It's like, I think I told you about graffiti.
Like hackers, and
right?
all those.
You get people who commit graffiti, and they can advise on how to prevent graffiti,
yes, of course.
Right?
Hackers and graffiti.
Oh,
digressing.
Oh, literally,
that's outrageous. I'm just thinking, isn't that funny that they thought, because this
Catch Me If You Can, right?
Catch
That
Me If You
movie,
Can.
okay?
FBI
Gotta call
working
the criminals to advise, all right? So now we know what's happening in the secret workings right now of those cogwheels in the prosecutor's mind.
Don't touch the mic, they're electrified.
So that's right. So I wasn't spooked with the steam. I wasn't spooked by that eerie, homage to the dead miners. I wasn't spooked by that. I was alert but not alarmed. I wasn't spooked by, but when I got to that crater. I was alert
but not alarmed. That's a good line.
Yeah, it's a good John Howard line. But when I got to the crater, I realised, this is really, really dangerous. And now the voyeur side started to peel back, and I felt a little bit heightened to go, okay, I've seen this. So we sort of hung around a bit longer, looked around a few things. It was, as I said, no other tourists. So, there were a couple of people in the distance, but it wasn't like White Island as we know it now. This is like late 90s, 98 maybe. So we made our way back and off we went. So, and I thought nothing of it until the White Island disaster that made it to the news.
Well, so you had a quick exit. You were able to, if you needed to run back to the helicopter and to take off and to escape quickly.
Assuming the helicopter was functional and ready to
Correct.
go, right? There's all these assumptions here.
Yeah, so when I've done a few cruises, and when you come to tourist venues and destinations, they ferry you out. You know, they might do 20, 30 runs in small boats. So the idea of getting people off the island quickly was just not doable because they couldn't just take everyone off in one go.
Well, we talked, last time we spoke about the deep, dark depths of the ocean, being underwater too, and diving, and all those kinds of considerations of really dramatic effects that can occur.
What about the submersible?
And we'll certainly chat about that too.
So I'll get back there. So if you asked me then, what was the exit plan? Our pace, so to speak, we see all our wonderful, eloquent congregate in the event of a disaster. All our eloquent systems we have in place. But what happens when you go to an uncontrolled, almost extraterrestrial experience?
Think a little bit about human factors. I mean, so human factors is some kind of understanding about the psychocognitive capabilities of humans, the tactics, the biomechanics, the physiology, and the social systems around this. And so it's fine to say, yes, but we gave advice that you need to madly rush. But when it really happens, your mind goes blank. Well, let's just talk about human capabilities. And you haven't practiced it. You don't have habits of doing this. No. And people freak out and tensions are high and panic is up there. Correct. And so nobody's going to follow a protocol with a one-off induction.
Trajce, you might be able to help with this, but from what I've seen from the footage, you just couldn't run to the water. You have to scramble over
even if you were logically sort of your brain was ready to act the way you'd been instructed, you're saying you didn't have access?
Well, getting to the water wasn't a complete solution. But, it's not like there were, at least from the footage I've seen, it wasn't sandy beaches that you could run down the beach into the water.
Bouldering.
If you fell, steam would get in you. You'd probably lose an eye with the steam. Yeah. But the only strategy was, the only thing you could do, certainly from my experience there, was run.
Run.
But where do you run to? There's nowhere to run to.
I'll rephrase that. If we want to be
which direction? Where are you going?
If we want our risk management to be more robust, run and or hide. That was it.
Where? Where do you hide?
So here's the thing. So we have allowed, so the PCBU, that person in control of the experience and not in control of the island. Only Mother Nature is in control of that island. Often humans forget about that.
Yes.
We often forget about that. I mean, if humans get being in control of a human-made contraption like Dreamworld, if they can't get that right, what hope have they got of getting Mother Nature right?
Look, I've just pulled up an article from the Sydney Morning.
That strikes me.
I've pulled up an article from the Sydney Morning Herald, and you've got American tourist Matt Uri of the tour saying, look, they make it sound exciting. They didn't make it sound dangerous. And an Australian adrenaline junkie, Jesse Langford, says, hey, I still love the risk, but calculated risk is the word that needs to be said.
Wow. And you know what's really scary? Some things were calculated in this White Island disaster. I can't think of any other word. You know what was calculated?
What's that?
Every 3 years, there was evidence to show that this thing blew, but in the night. So there was geomorphological...
So we're just expecting it to happen again at nighttime.
there was geomorphological evidence to show. There was meteorological
supposed to know where the moon is at the time, right.
To show that this thing is unstable, yet the tourists kept coming. They kept coming.
So there's some trust and faith in the tour guides and the system of work that there is an evacuation plan that works, right? That there's a strategy and there's equipment and there's something. Like, I want to wear a jetpack so I know I can just fly away if I needed to, right?
Yeah, actually, that's really well said, Sarah. Yeah, they had to have been implicit in the terms of engagement that there would have been a strategy. And even if I said it's run or hide, because that's what the poor people could do, but it's interesting that there was some turning of the mind, if you like, some analysis. But my point is this: no amount of human analysis somehow outsmarting Mother Nature.
Well, so you've got to know not just risk, not probability. I've talked about this many times, that there's a consequence of something really bad happening, some material unwanted event, something that hits the headlines like this. Yeah. So what is your plan for those type of credible failure modes? Yeah. What are your plans then?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Are there any plans? I'm going to flip this.
I want the jetpack. I want the Jetsons jetpack. I want to fly away. I want an individual.
Well, when you go on a tourist event, you don't feel as though you have to do that risk assessment. You're trusting that they've already done it.
And so what's that voluntary acceptance of risk? You bring that up all the time, Alan, and it doesn't matter. You signed a paper saying, hey, I know this volcano can blow. Yeah. Sign where? Put the date.
Here's the thing.
Initial. Right?
Violenti is like the occasional snorkeling fatality, and I've done truckloads of those. The occasional diving.
There's skydiving where you're, what do you call tandem?
Yes.
Right? No, and this is terrible. This was in San Luis Obispo, California, and went up several times. And so my girlfriend, so stereotype, again, another U.S. story, she starts dating the dive instructor, right? The dive instructor has been taking her on amazing dates around California in his little plane, right? Wow, okay, I'll fall for you too, right? So, okay, it's all thrills,
Any
etc.
pilots out there?
But this is terrible because this is you're interested.
Instructor.
There's a terrible story here. There's something quite morbid. So after the hours of the dive day, the skydiving tourist day, the instructors went up in their small plane and it crashed. They had a problem with the plane. This is low budget, duct tape kind of things to put things together. They were also taking off somewhere where they didn't have license or regulation approval to take off.
Sounds like the submersible situation, which we'll get to.
So at the back of this back airport, and a couple of the dive instructors died. And it was horrible, right? The license to operate, it was horrendous.
Here off Stradbroke Island, or one of the islands, or Morton Island, recently, and the helicopter incidents at SeaWorld, beginning of the year or last year.
Oh yes,
so
we've lost
homegrown.
Folks in a helicopter collision. That's right, an accident. That's right.
And certainly when and for me, in my mind, I can unpack violenti not fit injuria, the voluntary acceptance of risk, and that you assume these things. I can get that when you can contain the occasional. Thankfully, it's not regular. I mean, Dreamworld's another story which we'll get to, but the occasional
thrill,
the occasional parachute failing, or the occasional plane malfunctioning, the occasional helicopter, as dramatic as it is. But this island of 22 people perishing.
22 people with not an appropriate action plan should the volcano.
I'm going to push it further.
Go.
Why
go there? Why go there? Is that what you're saying?
No. If you go there, what type of action plan could you have? Apart from jetpacks.
And how do you prepare people? So we've talked about extended reality. I mean, how much more meaningful would it be to be in an immersive environment and really understand this is what it's going to feel like. This is what it's going to sound like. This is what we need to do, right? My son had to have an MRI recently, wakeboarding fail. So a fall off a stunt wakeboarding, and problem with his foot. So he went in for an MRI, and this is a child who isn't claustrophobic, but it's still kind of nerve-wracking as a kid, or anyone. A lot of people get nervous, and I was talking to the operators and said, wouldn't this be great if you could have some immersive environment where people can understand what they're about to go into exactly before you have to de-escalate their fears and resolve this. And also their family members, because some of the family members don't really understand it. And it looks very technical. Anything healthcare, people sometimes have some fear just with the white walls, the sterile environment, the formality. Very noisy going in there, and so and the containment, so wouldn't that be great in the waiting room to make sure people have had a little bit of a chance and de-escalate this?
And look, that could be, again, that's a good step, but I still wonder though, knowing that
I think to accept a risk you have to understand the risk.
So what's your understanding of hazard education?
Well, Alan, can I ask you how can you understand the risk of a volcano going off like that? How?
I'm going to say the word consequence again. So
how?
Low probability.
Well, you have to say, if the volcano goes off, we can't save you.
So you're saying that voluntary acceptance document would hold up better if they'd gone through?
No, absolutely
all right, no. I just want to clarify this.
Just this concept of accepting a risk, you know, we were talking before about people going diving, and we've had lots of fatalities, unfortunately, in Queensland with divers. And you get
theme parks.
People who've never swum before in their life, they just have no understanding at all of the risks they're confronting.
Yes.
Let's get started, 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 let's get started. Who's gonna start this? We're gonna start.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Why Work. You've been listening to Trajce, Sara and Alan. And if you'd like to know more about some of the things we've talked about today, please subscribe, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with information and other things that may interest you. Please be aware that none of the matters we've talked about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work. See you next time.
To the ladies are smooth and charming, to our enemies cold and disheartening, willing and able, not made.